Crowley buried one of its more prominent attorneys today, Nolan Edwards.
Meanwhile, the investigation into his killing goes on. Details next on Action 3 News.
This is KATC Lafayette. Dennis Smith, Steve Coco, Lynn Thornton with sports, and Ed Roy with the weather. From KATC Television, this is Action 3 News.
Crowley attorney Nolan Edwards is being buried at this hour. He was the brother of former Governor Edwin Edwards. St. Michael's Catholic Church in Crowley is packed with state officials and other dignitaries, friends and family of the deceased as well. Nolan Edwards was killed yesterday in his law office by a disgruntled ex-client. Police say Rodney Wingate shot himself after killing Edwards.
The investigation into the apparent murder-suicide involving Nolan Edwards and Rodney Wingate goes on. Some police had stated yesterday that they believed some friends had driven him to Edwards' office. Authorities now say that's incorrect, and eyewitnesses have confirmed that he walked there. The Acadia Parish coroner has not released blood test results from the autopsy performed on Wingate's body to determine if he had been under the influence of drugs during the shooting. Authorities do admit they smelled alcohol on his body. Wingate was also buried this afternoon in the family plot at the Church of the Assumption in Mere.
Former LSU football star Billy Caron today was sentenced to 5 years in prison for his part in a $6 million counterfeiting scheme. We have more in this report from Heath Allen.
Dr. Billy Caron was a college All-American Heisman Trophy football player at LSU, an All-Pro in the Old American Football League. But today, in federal court in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison with a $10,000 fine after pleading guilty to a part in a counterfeiting ring that produced more than $6 million in bogus $100 bills, better than $1 million still unrecovered. Caron told federal judge Frank Palazzolo what he did was terribly wrong and said he was doing everything he could to correct it. His attorneys even offered a suggested sentence to the court: jail on the weekends, the rest in community service. But the judge was blunt. He told Caron the famous and the unknown were the same in his courtroom, and he gave Caron the maximum sentence. Caron left the court the back way. He has until September the 12th to turn himself over to federal authorities and begin serving a 5-year term. Heath Allen for ABC News.
Let's go to Peter Jennings in Washington for a look at what's coming up on ABC's World News Tonight.
The economy did so well this spring, the government has had to adjust its already very positive numbers upwards. The gross national product climbed 9.2% between April and June. That's a 0.5% better than government economists expected, and it is the highest rate of growth in 5 years. And since the GNP measures total productivity, it also determines the number of jobs available to do that producing. Those, too, are on the rise. But with the boom must a bust in the form of higher inflation and interest rates be far behind. We'll examine that question and look at the day's other events on World News Tonight. I'm Peter Jennings in Washington.
The Coast Guard is still looking for a tugboat that's been missing off the Louisiana coast since Hurricane Alicia struck. The boat, the Joel Robin, is believed to have 5 people aboard. It was at the eastern edge of the storm when the Guard lost radio contact with the boat.
In the business world today, Wall Street closed with the weakest of gains in a lackluster session. The Dow Jones closed up near the 1195 level, trading for the day near 59 million shares. Farm futures fell today. Sugar futures dropped almost 40 in September and October. The New York spot went for 22.79. Soybean futures dropped about 30 in all 3 months.
Financial trouble is causing some problems for the state's health offices. Jane Alice reports health officials are looking for ways to avoid any more layoffs.
State Office of Public Health is dealing with 3 serious financial blows. This year, health department officials are confronted with reductions in federal, state, and local funding. Already, some of the Acadiana offices have experienced layoffs.
All state agencies have experienced a reduction in our budget, which has translated, unfortunately, into a reduction in the number of employees working for the state health unit. We're hoping that we won't, no one else will lose their job.
Romero says it's possible to reduce the number of employees through attrition. The state's health units offer a number of services to the community, like maternity care and a VD clinic. These services and others will not be discontinued, but the officials may have to reduce the operating hours of some of the smaller clinics. Jane Ellis, KATC, Action 3 News.
It was a beautiful but hot day in Acadiana today. Let's check it out with Ed to see how long it might last.
Dennis, I'm just sitting here marveling at Louisiana weather. We go from rags to riches. This weekend, it looks like riches. We're going to have a lot of sunshine, and I'll talk with you about that in just a few minutes.
Still to come, the story of two youngsters who've learned honesty has its own reward.
An action reporter in the story of a dangerous ditch.
On Action Reporter today, the problem involves a utility pole that's lacking a light. Here's Steve Coco.
The Action Reporter camera is in Dusau today, and some people think that this utility pole in the background here needs a light on it. This is where 5th Street runs into Highway 343 in Dusau. Right next to the street is this ditch with a concrete culvert. The culvert is pretty beat up because during nighttime, a lot of people miss the turn and hit the ditch. That's what happened to these two girls, Lynette LaBeouf and Sean Romero.
Well, we were leaving the store, and we were going home, and I was turning, and I looked to see if it was the road, and thought it was, and when I turned right into the culvert. I came straight in here. Just couldn't see. It was dark.
Lynette got a ticket for reckless driving. She had to pay $38. They both suffered minor injuries.
Well, I hit the windshield, and I had a slight cut up here, and it left a bump for a couple of days. And then we both hit the dashboard, so I had cuts on my knees and bruises on my knees. And that was about it. And then a headache, from the bump on my head for a while.
Okay, did you have any idea that y'all were going to run off the road?
No. In fact, I had told her, Lynette, the road's right here. And even I couldn't see it.
The people who own this store here say that in the past 5 years, at least a dozen people have run off the road into that ditch. Do you think a light on this utility pole would help the situation?
I think it might, because, it was so black, the ditch was pitch black, and there was no lights around. And I think maybe a light might help.
I want a light there so nobody else will do what I did, thinking they see the road and turn, so I'd like to put a street light there so nobody else would do it.
Dusau City officials say they were not aware of the problem, but say they will study the situation and consider putting a light on the pole. That would make driving there a lot safer. If you have a problem, call the Action Line. That number is 232-KATC.
A week ago, Action 3 News told you about two young boys from Scott who found some money. The youngsters turned the lost $95 over to the police. Well, Jack Frost tells us what's happened since then.
In late July, Randall Hoffpower and Robbie Holloway, searching for aluminum cans along the old Spanish Trail in Scott, found a bag containing $95. On advice from parents, they turned in the money to police. The rightful owner was found August 7th. TV3 told their story and, for their honesty, gave Robbie and Randall a reward. From that story, the two have received praise and other unexpected benefits.
My mama answered the phone and then I was playing my guitar, and she said that a lady called to give me a bunch of cans. And everybody says that they think I'm a movie star and they like I done some great.
We're happy to know that they're honest. We're teaching them to be honest boys, and we'd like to have them to stay that way.
How about you?
Well, the reaction has been so positive. It's really been a joy to watch all the people come up to me, and the mayor has contacted me, and it's been really a thrill. Even our parish priest has made his sermon over the boys.
Now there's more. A viewer who wishes to remain anonymous has given Randall and Robbie $25 each, saying, "I was very touched by your honesty. May both of you remember this and practice it all the days of your life." But there was one stipulation in the letter, that the youngsters give to their mothers a big red rose. What about that?
Well, I'm going to go to the florist, and I'm going to go to the bank, and I'm going to cash this check, and then I'm going to go to the florist and buy a big red rose.
Good. How about you, Randall?
I will, too, go and buy a big red rose, too.
Oh, I think that's great. This is Jack Frost, and that's good news.
Jerry Grayson's next with sports, and a special treat, an interview with football great Gale Sayers.
Jerry, you interviewed one of the greatest running backs, Gale Sayers.
Yes, and I was
time.
very much impressed. The man has opinions on just about anything you ask him, especially on the drug abuse case in the NFL right now. Gale Sayers is no longer involved in pro football. He hasn't been for 13 years. But that doesn't mean the man doesn't know what's going on around the NFL these days. And what's going on a lot is reportedly widespread drug abuse. Gale Sayers, to be kind, doesn't like it.
Free time, they should be trying to prepare themselves to do other things. They're not going to play that sport the rest of their life. Football is a 4-year proposition. That's the average life. At 27, I'm looking for another job. You know, so I don't buy that they have too much time. They're making too much money. They better start preparing themselves for that life after sports, where they got to work a 9-to-5 job, because it's going to happen sooner or later. They're not going to make enough money where they don't have to work the rest of their life. It's going to happen sooner or later for the majority of them. The ones who are making the big money are in the minority. They're in the minority. You got 1 or 2%. But the majority are making $85,000, $100,000 a year, which is a good salary, but they're spending that money also. So they better start trying to prepare themselves to do something else. So off-season time, there shouldn't be any off-season free time. They should be going back to school, trying to get a degree, or trying to prepare for a skill so when that day's over, that they can work and create a living for their family.
I take it you have no sympathies for the players?
None whatsoever. I hope Roselle, the next time it happens, they suspend the players for a year. If it happens the second time, suspend them for life. It's ridiculous to have making that kind of money, doing something that you enjoy doing. It'd be different if you had a gun to your head and saying you got to play football. God gave them a talent, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, whether it's baseball. God gave them a talent to play a sport, something they enjoy doing. Then they're going to mess it up by doing some things that at this time, in this day and age, is against the law.
We'll have more with Gale Sayers tonight at 6. Well, our first impression was that after last night, people would be tired of pine tar. Well, first impressions aren't always best. So for you diehards who have to see it one more time, here's the way Kansas City and New York settled the infamous pine tar game.
Part 2 of this unusual game began with Yankee pitcher George Frazier throwing to first base. Manager Billy Martin told the umpires George Brett hadn't touched the base after hitting his disputed home run 3 weeks ago. That appeal denied, it was time to play ball, and the Royals' Hal McRae struck out, ending the Kansas City ninth. For the Yankees, it was 3 up and 3 down. Dan Quisenberry got Don Mattingly to pop out. Roy Smalley did likewise, and then pinch hitter Oscar Gamble grounded out. Despite the lawsuits, the protests, and the hoopla, the game is now history. Kansas City 5, the New York Yankees 4. This is Ron DePaulis reporting.